Guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Heather. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids, elementary, middle, and high school age. Today is going to be week 3 of 2024 goal prep, so let's get started. If you have not seen my first 2 videos, I really recommend stopping this video and going back and watching those 2 videos first. This video will make so much more sense if you do that. I will have them linked in the description box. Also, if you are looking for more help and encouragement surrounding your goals or home or homeschool, I would love for you to come check out my membership community where I have been walking through goal prep with my members live in our weekly live streams. I will leave a link for my membership community in the description box as well. So we are going to be starting today with a yes and no list. And I realized after I filmed last week's video that I did not even mention a yes and no list in that video. And that is one of the most important parts of goal setting for me, is to create a yes and no list. And the reason that I think that this is so important is because I want to reduce decision fatigue as much as possible in the new year. And I think that that's common for all moms, homeschool moms, public school moms, any moms at all, really people in general, honestly, if we're thinking about it. Decision fatigue is such a struggle because there are so many decisions to be made every single day, and it can be really difficult when you are in the middle of a situation where somebody is asking you something or you're trying to plan something for an upcoming season to make those decisions. And so a yes and no list allows you to make decisions in advance so that you don't have to make them in the moment. You've already written them down. You've already evaluated where you're willing to say yes, where you're willing to say no, and you can go from there. It makes it so much easier. Years ago, I feel like I keep saying that years ago in all of my videos about goals lately. Years ago, I really struggled with saying no to people. I was under the impression that it was my responsibility to make everyone around me comfortable and happy and do as much as possible while sacrificing myself to get everybody else in a state of mind that they are happy about. And it took me a long time to realize that it's not my responsibility to do that. And you may be on that path right now, trying to make sure that everybody around you is happy and content, but that's not your job. Yes, if you're a mom and a wife, you do have responsibilities in the home, but honestly, it's not all on you. And so taking some time to realize that was very beneficial for me and helpful. When I did that, I think it was maybe back in 2012, 2013, I really went through a whole mindset shift. And so I definitely recommend sitting down and taking out your Powersheets and writing down where you're willing to say yes and where you're willing to say no. And I did that in the Powersheets. I do that every year. I pretty much do it twice a year, at the beginning of the year in relation to my goals, but then also when I'm planning for a new homeschool year, I will sit down and make sure that I have a very specific list of yeses and nos in relation to homeschooling. A lot of it carries over from my yearly yes and no list, but there are some particular things that are only homeschool related that I also include in my mid-year check-in, I guess I would say. So that's the place that you're going to start. You're going to want to sit down and figure out what you are willing to say yes and no to. Now, obviously, these are going to be broad yeses and nos. It's not going to be super specific decisions, although it can be. In regards to something like homeschooling, you know, I can say we aren't going to do X activity. And in fact, I did that back in going into 2022. I had said that we weren't going to do public school band or public school activities anymore. That has been a big part of our homeschool since we started homeschooling, participating in the music program as well as local sports programs with the public school. And going into 2022, I didn't want to do that. And we didn't at the beginning of 2022. But then in the fall of 2022, we went back and did all of those things. And it was a really bad fit for my kids, for me. And had I stuck to my yes and no list, we wouldn't have had those struggles going into 2023 and being so burnt out. So when you take the time ahead of time outside of the pressure to make that decision, you're making a better decision. You're able to really flesh out the why behind the yeses and nos. A couple of great books, if you are looking for more information about how to say yes and how to say no, are Sally Clarkson's Own Your Life and Lisa Turkhurst's book called The Best Yes. I believe those are what those two books are called. I will leave them linked in the description box for you. Those are very, very helpful when you are trying to figure out what a good yes and a good no is. So that's where you're going to want to start. You're going to want to put together your yes and no list and make sure that you make as many decisions ahead of time as you can. That's part of why I do so much pre-planning and prepping in advance. It's so that my life is able to run not necessarily on autopilot, but almost on autopilot for some of the things that aren't as important to me. Things like cleaning routines, things like our day-to-day schedule, those types of things. I don't want to have to constantly be thinking about them. I don't want to constantly be having to say, can you do X? Or are we going to do Y? You know, I want to have all of that stuff done as much as possible ahead of time so that I'm able to enjoy the moments. Because when I have to constantly be thinking about all of the things, I'm not in the moment, I'm not enjoying the moment because I'm thinking, oh, well, I have to do X, Y, and Z after this, so I can't enjoy being present. So, you know, that's just one example, and it's obviously a very personal example for me, and perhaps you don't struggle as much. And if you don't, that is amazing. But I would definitely put some time into this yes and no list. And oftentimes when you're going through your reflection, which we talked a lot about in the first video, you will see where you may have said yes and no that didn't work for you. And so you will see that come out in your, you know, what went well, or what struggles or challenges did you have, or like the highs and lows of the year. You can see where perhaps you made a decision that you should have made in an opposite direction. And so the yes and no list is so helpful. I definitely recommend it. Don't skip over this section. And so at the end of last week's video, we started talking about themes, that you are going to look at the themes that you saw in your reflections and start to create some ideas surrounding those themes. Now, I talked a lot in video 1 about all of the brain dump lists that I make and how I categorize everything into many, many categories. I think I had maybe 12 or 14 different categories. Some of them can be combined, and some of them weren't really as important as I expected. I just write all of the main things that I think about as categories of my life up at the top of my Leuchtturm pages, and then I just start making lists underneath them. Now, as I've gone through, I see, okay, well, some of these things are all related to one another. Even if they are in different goal areas, I can see how they connect. And so I realize that those things are the most important, and those are the places that I really want to focus on in 2024. And so as you're going through and starting to brainstorm your goals, you're going to want to kind of make connections with all of those lists. Are there things that pop up in the different lists in your goal ideas that are connected? So I have just a bunch of stuff that I list out. These are not all of the things from the list that I had at the beginning of my Leuchtturm notebook, all those brain dump lists. Instead, it is continuing to pare down, because obviously you cannot do everything in one year that you want. Even out of all of these projects that I have listed here, I'm not entirely sure that I will get through all of these, and that's okay. The point of goals for me is to constantly be making progress. I know that each season is going to be different, and I don't know what next season is going to bring for me. Something could happen in January that will completely derail all of my 2024 goals. In fact, in 2020, something happened in January, and then something happened in February that derailed all of my goals. Well, first, we sold our house in January, or we got an offer on our house in January. We sold our house in February, January, bought a new house, and then COVID happened. So 2020 did not at all turn out as I expected, nor did it turn out for anybody the way they expected. So understanding that I only have so much control over this is very, very important to understand and to not get upset about. It's, I think, very easy to feel defeated when you aren't able to accomplish some things. But if you are still continuing to make little by little progress, at the end of the year, you can celebrate that. And that is really, really important. So I have a lot of different lines connecting different goal ideas in here. And so that's the next step that you're going to want to go to. After you've created your yes and no list and you've started to brainstorm your goal ideas for 2024, pulling out the most important areas that you want to work on, that you did your cultivated life evaluation on, that you reflected on for 2023, and all of the things that you did in 2023, that's when you're going to start to, I like to do this kind of web, but you can do whatever you want to flesh out those ideas. There's a great section in the Powersheets called Brainstorm Your Goals, and this can also be a place where you can do something similar to what I've done in the Lloydstrom notebook. Now, I think I said this last time, this is not enough space for me. This would probably be enough space for me for Q1 to go through and just kind of brainstorm in the different areas, and I would just cross out any of the labels for categories that do not apply to my particular categories. That's another thing that I want to say. Powersheets a couple of years ago started to filter their goals through the CLE categories, the Cultivated Life Evaluation categories. And I think that's really helpful if you've not done goal setting before, because it's hard to kind of figure out, oh, well, where do I want to spend my time this next year? But if you've been goal setting for a long time, you most likely have areas of your life that may not line up with these particular goal categories, or maybe you have two bigger goals in specific areas, or something like spiritual and personal growth you want to separate. Well, Cultivate What Matters does give you a blank category this year, which I think is very helpful. I don't use this the way that they've written it. I use it as a check-in for these areas, but I use my own categories, and that is totally okay. You can make it work for you. You don't have to do exactly as prescribed if you don't want to. And then the next step for me is to kind of look at all of these goal ideas that I have and start to come up with some words. Are there themes within those goal ideas? I know I've talked about themes in every single goal setting video, but that's kind of how I look at the goals. I want to see where are the areas or themes that are continuously popping up. What are those things, and how are they connected to the different areas of my life, or to the different categories that I'm setting goals in? And so I start playing around with wording for my goals. So you want to kind of come up with some different wording for your goals to see what really resonates with you, what is going to make you want to keep coming back to this goal month after month throughout 2024. It can be specific. You do kind of want to follow this Bloom acronym when you are writing your goal wording, but you don't want it to be so specific that it's a project, because that's going to be the next step. Once you start doing your quarterly action plans and then eventually your monthly pages where you're setting up your tending list and you're breaking down your projects into really manageable, actionable steps. But right now we're just kind of looking at the wording of the goals. What is going to draw you in? What is going to motivate you to continue looking at these goals and trying to make progress throughout the year? And sometimes when you're looking at the goal wording, it can be challenging, and it does take a little bit of time to go through and figure it out. It doesn't have to be super amazing words. It doesn't have to be so well written that you feel like it can go plastered on a billboard. It can be very personal to you, and it really ought to be personal to you. So don't stress about the wording of your goals too much. I struggle with that sometimes, and that's why I'm saying that. In my next goals video, I will share my 2024 goals and I will talk a little bit about the wording of the goals and how I came to the wording. Now you're just going to kind of look at the different ideas that you have and see if you can come up with some words to create those goals. And then what I want you to do is the last step for this video is to look at your word of the year if you have chosen one. If you haven't, you can start looking at a word of the year, see if there's something that is pulled out of your goal wording that makes sense. But look at your word of the year and look at your goals in relation to that word. How does that word measure up against your goals, and how is that word going to help you continue to maintain motivation throughout the year to continue with your goals? So my word of the year this year is simplify, and within my different goals, I definitely have some ideas on how I want to simplify, why I want to simplify, and that is where we're going to stop for today. So make sure you look at your yes and no list, sit down, pre-make some of those decisions so that you don't have to feel pressured in the moment throughout next year when you are asked questions or asked to participate things, or your kids want to do something or you want to do something. You already know going in what those answers should be because you've put in the work ahead of time to make those decisions. Then I want you to sit down and kind of map out what the different goal areas are and the projects that you really want to work on within those different goal areas. See what connections there are, and then evaluate those ideas and projects and words and come up with your 2024 goal wording. And then look at your word of the year and figure out how that word relates to your goals and what that word is going to mean for you as you are working on your goals in the new year. So that's where we're going to stop today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Again, if you would like to come over and check out my membership community, we are a community all about managing our home and homeschool well, and I would love to have you come over and check us out. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys. Bye.